Thousands of penguins line the windswept shores, standing together against crashing waves and the frozen southern wind. This is where their story begins, and where ours truly begins too. At the very edge of the map, where the land seems to stop and the world opens into ice, wind, and sea, lies Patagonia, the bottom of the world. Stretching across nearly 400,000 square miles of southern Argentina and Chile, it is home to just over 2 million people, yet it still feels endless, silent, and deeply unspoiled. Here, fjords cut deep into the coastline, glaciers move through ancient valleys and open plains. Salt lakes and towering cliffs create a landscape shaped over time. Across it all, guanacos roam the vast steppe. Condors soar, and whales glide through cold southern waters. To start this journey, we're heading straight into the heart of the Andes. Cerro Catedral is named after its sharp, cathedral-like peaks and stands over 2,400 meters tall in the Andes. It was shaped over thousands of years by glaciers, forming steep slopes, long ridges, and wide valleys that define the entire landscape. In winter, the mountain turns into a full ski area covered in deep snow. Chairlifts move steadily up the slopes, carrying people higher into the cold. On the runs, snowboarders are scattered across the mountain, descending at different speeds, some fast, carving through fresh snow. Others moving slowly as they take in the view. From a distance, you can see movement everywhere, but it never feels crowded. As you go higher, the atmosphere changes. The sounds from the base area fade away. The wind becomes stronger, and the air feels colder and sharper. It truly feels like Patagonia is the end of the world. Another amazing place is El Calafate, a small town in Argentine Patagonia that sits on the southern edge of Lake Argentino. El Calafate started as a small remote settlement and slowly grew into one of Patagonia's main tourism towns. In its shallow waters, you can even spot pink flamingos, their colour standing out against the cold, quiet tones of the landscape. One of the most striking sights here is Lake Argentino, the largest freshwater lake in Argentina. Its waters shift between deep blue and turquoise tones, especially on a bright sunny day when the light reflects off the surface. Around the lake, seabirds are constantly in motion, flying low over the water, resting on the shore, and filling the silence with movement. While wild guanacos can sometimes be seen roaming the open land nearby. And as you look across the horizon, the lake is shaped by the blue glacier fields in the distance, where vast ice formations stretch across the landscape and feed into the water in a powerful connection between ice and lake. Now, the world gets smaller and louder. At Punta Tombo and Isla Magdalena, the shore belongs to penguins. thousands of them. Marching, calling, feeding, nesting, returning, all with the strange confidence of creatures that understand the rhythm of this land better than we ever could. At a distance, they look almost funny. Up close, they feel serious. Every movement is survival. Every burrow is a home. Every call is a signal in a life ruled by instinct. One colony stands in Argentina, the other in Chile, but both tell the same story. In Patagonia, life does not survive by being soft. It survives by being precise, disciplined, and relentless. That is what makes the penguins so memorable. They are not just cute wildlife shots. They are a lesson in endurance. And from these crowded shorelines, the journey keeps moving south. One of the oldest national parks in Argentina is Nahuel Huapi National Park. Established in 1934, stretching across a vast part of northern Patagonia. At the center of the park is Lake Nahuel Huapi, a deep glacial lake formed thousands of years ago during the last ice age. Its clear blue water reflects the surrounding peaks. The park is also home to wildlife. The Andean condor, one of the largest flying birds in the world, can often be seen gliding high above the mountains, using air currents to travel long distances. On the ground, red deer move through the forests. Guanacos roam the open landscapes in small groups. And foxes quietly pass through the terrain, often staying out of sight, but very much part of this environment. The forests here are made up of native trees like lenga and koihui, and standing here, surrounded by water, forest, and distant peaks, it feels like a place where nature still exists on its own terms. Puerto Madryn is a part of Patagonia that early explorers once described as the edge of the known world, because of how difficult to reach it felt from major civilization routes. It was founded in 1865 by Welsh settlers. What makes it striking today is the contrast it holds. The city itself feels calm and orderly, with coastal buildings facing a deep blue Atlantic Ocean that stretches endlessly along the shore. Just offshore lies the Valdez Peninsula, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Where whales, sea lions, and other marine life gather in seasonal cycles. But just beyond the town, everything changes. Outside the city limits, there is nothing but dry Patagonian steppe stretching for hundreds of kilometers, slowly meeting the ocean with no forests, no major settlements, just open land and constant wind. And that contrast is what defines it. A peaceful coastal city on one side, and an almost empty landscape on the other, where the horizon feels wider than it should be. Puerto Natales was founded in 1911 during the expansion of sheep farming in the region, and became an important export point for wool and livestock. transported from here to other parts of Chile through its coastal waters. It grew along the shoreline into a small, low-rise city, shaped naturally by the coast. Near the waterfront, old wooden piers extend into the channel, where cormorant birds rest with wings spread to dry in the cold wind. Nearby, moored boats drift gently with the tide. At sunset, warm tones spread across the water, softening the cold channel as town lights glow along the waterfront. The reflections merge with the sea, connecting the fading sky with the calm surface. Capillas de Mármol is where Patagonia stops looking like geography and starts looking like sculpture. The boat moves slowly, the water glows turquoise beneath you. Then the marble walls rise out of the lake, smooth, carved, striped, and shimmering as the light changes. It feels less like a cave and more like a cathedral built by time itself. This is the climax because it looks unreal. Stone and water should not behave like this together. The reflections shift, the colors deepen, the surface changes with every movement of the boat. And every second feels more beautiful than the last. But the human side matters here too. The people who live near Puerto Rio Tranquilo, the boat guides, the local families. They are part of the story. They turn a geological miracle into a lived place. Not with a loud finish, but with a quiet miracle. Ushuaia, founded in 1884 as a penal colony, grew in isolation and became a small but important port shaped by the sea. The city is built along the shoreline, with buildings facing the water and mountains rising behind. The port remains central, with boats and ships moving steadily through these southern waters. Along the coast, the St. Christopher shipwreck stands as a rusted landmark, now part of the city's everyday view. Ushuaia changes with the seasons as winter snow covers rooftops, streets, peaks, and even cars. And as it melts, forests and mountain views reappear, revealing a raw, open landscape. Further out at sea, the Les Éclaireurs lighthouse stands, marking the waters with its structure and reinforcing the city's connection to navigation and the ocean. At sunset, warm light spreads across the water as the city slowly dims. The mountains fall into shadow and everything settles into calm. And once Ushuaia leaves the frame, the story turns inland, toward a village that feels young, but somehow already legendary. El Chaltén is one of the youngest towns in the region, but it does not feel young at all. It feels like it was created to stand beneath the mountains. The peaks do not sit behind the village like a backdrop. They dominate it. They define it. They make every street, every trail, every cafe feel like part of a much larger mountain story. This is not a place that exists for convenience. It exists because the landscape demanded a base camp for awe. That is what makes El Chaltén so cinematic. It is small, but it sits in front of something enormous. It is modern, but it carries the emotional weight of an ancient place. People come for the hiking, of course, but what they remember is the feeling of being tiny beneath stone giants. And once you leave these peaks behind, the land begins moving again, not upward this time, but through water. Los Glaciares National Park was established in 1937 and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, connected to the third largest ice mass on Earth after Antarctica and Greenland. Its remote southern location, far from major cities and surrounded by vast ice and wilderness, gives it the reputation of the end of the world, where nature dominates and human presence is rare. The glaciers here formed during the last ice age, around 10,000 to 20,000 years ago, and have been slowly moving ever since, shaping the valleys and lakes of the region. One of the most well-known is the Perito Moreno Glacier, stretching about 30 kilometers with a front wall rising nearly 70 meters above the water. Unlike many glaciers worldwide, it remains stable and advances in natural cycles. Large chunks of ice regularly break off in a process called calving, crashing into the water with deep, echoing sounds. Its surface shows a strong blue tone, especially in dense, freshly exposed ice, giving it a powerful appearance. San Martín de los Andes feels like Patagonia exhaling. The lake is calm. The town is gentle. The light feels warmer. But the mountains never really leave the story. They stand there constantly, reminding you that this piece exists inside a much bigger wilderness. This is one of the places that gives Patagonia its human side. You see locals, travelers, families, and outdoor people all sharing the same space, all shaped by the same landscape. The rhythm is slower here. The streets feel lived in. The cafes feel like they belong. And the town has that rare quality of being comfortable without becoming ordinary. That contrast matters, because just as you settle into the calm, the journey rises again. Salto Grande Waterfall is one of the most active and powerful features in Torres del Paine National Park in southern Chile. It was formed thousands of years ago during the last ice age, when massive glaciers carved through this region and created the natural channels. What makes this place stand out isn't its height, but the force behind it. Large amounts of glacial meltwater are constantly pushed through a narrow passage, which is why the flow here feels strong and steady throughout the year. During warmer months, when the ice melts faster, the power of the water becomes even more noticeable. The area has been protected since the park was established in 1959, so the waterfall remains in its natural state, moving freely without any control, just as it has for generations. Another beautiful place is Cerro Torres. And to understand it, you first need to understand why Patagonia is called the end of the world. Not just for its geography, but for its isolation, distance, and how quickly the familiar fades away as you go deeper into the region. Cerro Torre is considered one of the most difficult mountains in the world to climb, not because of its height alone, but due to its steep granite walls and extreme, rapidly changing weather conditions. In the early morning, clouds wrap around Cerro Torre, often hiding and revealing its sharp peak. At its base lies Laguna Torre, a glacial lake fed by melting ice, with floating pieces drifting across its cold, still surface. As sunset approaches, the valley shifts in tone. The light fades, the ice and rock darken, and everything settles into deep silence. Bariloche is founded in the late 19th century. It grew from a small settlement into a gateway to Patagonia. What makes Bariloche special is its balance between a developed town with Swiss-style architecture and lakeside streets, and the wild Patagonia just beyond its edge with mountains and forests. The city is surrounded by Lake Nahuel Huapi, one of the largest and deepest lakes in Argentina, formed by ancient glacial activity. It brings a calm contrast to the region, while the weather stays unpredictable with cold winds and sudden changes that remind you how close you are to nature. In winter, steam can rise in the cold air, while the lake becomes more striking with snow-covered mountains around it. As the day ends, the sun sets behind the peaks, and the mountains stand dark against the fading light. And in moments like this, you don't just see Patagonia, you feel how close you are to its vast, remote edge, where the modern world begins to fade into something far more natural. Torres del Paine is located in southern Chile and was established as a national park in 1959. Today, it's also recognized as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, which highlights its global importance. But long before it became a protected area, this region was home to the Aonikenk people, who lived and moved across these lands for generations. What stands out immediately here are the three granite towers, the Torres, which rise to about 2,500 meters. These formations were shaped over millions of years by glaciers and erosion. And even today, the park is part of the southern Patagonian ice field, one of the largest ice masses outside Antarctica. There are no major cities nearby, and once you're inside the park, it's mostly just open landscapes, lakes, mountains, and long stretches with very few people. The weather can change quickly, and the winds here are known to be extremely strong, sometimes reaching over 100 kilometers per hour. All of this together makes it feel incredibly remote and untouched. This is a place that should be experienced at least once in a lifetime. Mount Fitz Roy is one of the most famous peaks formed around 100 million years ago through tectonic activity, when the South American plate was pushed upward, creating the Andes mountain range. It stands at about 3,405 meters above sea level and remains snow-covered for most of the year, especially on its upper peaks. Fitz Roy is also known for highly unstable weather. with strong winds and fast-changing clouds that can quickly reduce visibility and constantly change how the mountain looks. At its base are glaciers and small alpine lakes formed from meltwater. These water systems are directly connected to the surrounding ice fields and change seasonally based on temperature and snowfall. Because of this strong geological presence and extreme environment, Mount Fitz Roy remains one of Patagonia's most studied peaks. Circuito Chico is one of the most scenic routes in Argentine Patagonia, located near Bariloche. This circular drive along Route 77 stretches about 60 kilometers and is considered one of the most beautiful journeys in South America. As you follow the road, the landscape keeps changing in a natural flow. Dense forests of native trees line the route, opening up to wide viewpoints where lakes and distant mountains come into view, with the clear water reflecting the peaks almost like a mirror. Along the way, Lake Perito appears with a calm surface reflecting the surrounding landscape. There are no crowds here, just open space and a steady connection with nature. What makes Circuito Chico special is how everything feels naturally connected. You're not just passing through different locations. The forests, lakes, and mountains all blend into one continuous experience. The Manso River brings motion back into the story. After the stone and the wind, the river feels almost like a release. Cold water, glacial flow, forested banks, mountain runoff. Everything about it reminds you that Patagonia is not a still place. It is always in motion, always changing shape, always carrying something forward. The Manso can appear peaceful from one angle and fierce from another. That is what makes it so interesting. It is not just a scenic river, it is a living line through the Andes, connecting high mountain energy to the quieter valleys below. Locals know it well. They read it the way other people read roads, respectfully, carefully, sometimes with a little caution, and that quieter mood leads us next to a place where Patagonia softens for a moment without losing its edge. Santiago gives us one of the strongest contrasts in the entire journey. Down below, the city moves fast. Traffic, noise, buildings, routine. But lift your eyes, and the Andes are already there, turning the skyline into something almost unreal. And when you reach the ski stations above the city, the shift is immediate. Asphalt gives way to snow, noise gives way to wind. The capital below starts to look small. That is what makes this stop so powerful. It reminds you that Chile is never just one thing. It is urban and wild at the same time. Modern and mountain-backed. Busy at street level. Silent on the slopes. That kind of contrast stays with people. And from the city-high mountains of Santiago, the story moves south again, toward a volcano that looks almost too perfect to be real. Osorno Volcano looks like nature was trying to draw the perfect mountain. The cone is sharp, the snow cap is clean. The shape is so symmetrical it feels designed. And around it, the landscape opens into lakes, forests, and a quieter, more reflective version of Patagonia. It is beautiful, yes. But not just in a postcard way. Osorno has presence. It feels like a landmark that commands attention without needing to move. What makes it richer is the human world around it. Nearby towns carry a blend of local tradition and foreign influence. Especially in architecture, food, and daily life. So the volcano becomes more than a natural object. It becomes part of a lived culture. And that connection between land and people becomes even stronger as the journey enters one of Patagonia's most mysterious parks. Kula National Park feels like Patagonia turned into a dream. The forest is thick, the air is wet, mist drifts through the trees, water runs everywhere. And then suddenly, the hanging glacier appears, suspended, dramatic, almost impossible. It looks like the mountain started building something and then decided to leave it floating there. That is what makes Kula unforgettable. It blends things that should not feel like they belong together. Rainforest, fjords, ice, cloud, and silence. The result is a place that feels alive in layers. You do not just see it, you sense it. And the human feeling here is different too. Smaller, more careful, more respectful. The park reminds you that Patagonia is not a place to conquer. It is a place to witness. From hanging ice and dense forest, the story now moves to a lake so blue it barely feels real. General Carrera Lake is where Patagonia turns blue, deeply, almost impossibly blue. The water is glacial, wide and massive. It does not behave like ordinary water. It looks carved from ice and light. The wind moves across it like a living force. And the scale of it makes boats look tiny, and shorelines feel endless. It is the kind of lake that changes your sense of distance. But the beauty is not only in the size, it is in the feeling. This is a lake that feels ancient and alive at the same time. It carries weather, memory, and human life. People here live beside it, work with it, and depend on it. So the scene is never just visual. It is human too. And then comes the final chapter, the one that feels like Patagonia saving its most impossible image for last. At first, Valdez Peninsula looks almost empty. Wide land, cold air, long coastlines, nothing dramatic. Then you look closer and the silence breaks. Sea lions crowd the shore. Elephant seals lie in huge, unmoving piles like ancient stone blocks that happen to breathe. Offshore, whales surface like living shadows. That is the genius of Patagonia. It does not give away its drama immediately. It waits. It lets you think the land is quiet. And then it reveals that it is actually full of life. Valdez is one of those rare places where wildlife feels bigger than the landscape itself. The ocean here does not just surround the land, it commands it.